The morning they walked out on me, I remember the conference room felt colder than usual. Not physically, the thermostat was fine, emotionally, like someone had opened a window and let in a draft of disrespect strong enough to freeze the confidence out of anyone. I stood at the front of a polished mahogany table. My slides queued, my notes arranged, my heartbeat steady but hopeful. I had spent 3 months preparing for this proposal, 3 months of lost sleep, quiet prayers, and late-night revisions under the soft glow of my desk lamp. It was supposed to be the meeting that changed my career. Instead, it was the moment my entire leadership team stood up, one by one, and left as if I wasn't even worth the courtesy of a full minute. No excuse. No explanation. Just the hush of closing doors and the echo of their footsteps disappearing down the hallway. I felt myself shrinking inside that vast room, surrounded by empty leather chairs that seemed to mock me with their silence. But humiliation has a strange way of clearing the fog around truth. And standing in that cold, abandoned room, I realized something. If the people who should support you walk away, maybe you've been standing in the wrong room all along. So instead of breaking down, I picked up my phone and called the one person who could turn the entire situation on its head. I had no idea that phone call would set off a chain of events that would shift the whole power structure of the company. My name is Elena Carter, and I had worked at Holton Dynamics for 9 years, long enough to know how the building smelled after a fresh wax, long enough to learn who whispered what in the hallways, and long enough to see more betrayals disguised as professionalism than I care to admit. I started as a junior analyst, fresh out of grad school, armed with spreadsheets and ambition. The executive said I had promise, which I later learned meant I worked hard enough to use but not loudly enough to credit. Still, I stayed. Not because they valued me, but because I valued the work. By year 7, I was leading projects that used to require whole teams. By year 8, I had cut operational costs by 32% with a model I built over winter break because I had nothing better to do. And by year 9, I had designed a restructuring plan that could save the company millions and rescue us from the slow, silent financial rot the executives refused to acknowledge. That plan, the one I poured my life into, was the presentation they walked out on. The signs were there long before that morning. Small things, dismissive comments disguised as jokes, meetings I wasn't invited to, though their outcomes somehow landed on my desk, people taking my ideas and presenting them with the confidence of thieves who assume the world is blind. The worst was Mark, the CFO, a man who smiled at you the way a politician smiles at voters, warm from far away, cold the closer you got. He'd been trying to edge me out quietly for a year, assigning impossible deadlines or forgetting to forward documents I needed. But if Mark was subtle, Claudia the coup was a storm. Every time she passed my desk, she looked at me as if I were a stubborn stain she couldn't scrub out of the company's perfect carpet. Still, I believed in fairness. I believed in merit. So when the CEO asked for a strategic recovery plan, I stayed up nights building one so airtight it could survive a hurricane of scrutiny. I tested scenarios, modeled risks, even consulted external economists quietly, anonymously, because I knew what I was doing was bigger than anything they expected of me. And I thought foolishly that excellence would be enough. The morning of the presentation, I ironed my best blazer, left home early, arrived before anyone else. I set up the projector myself, rehearsed my opening 3 times, even placed water bottles at every seat like some hopeful intern desperate for approval. Then, when all 10 executives filed in with their notebooks and coffee cups, I felt something warm in my chest. Maybe this would be the day they finally saw me. But before I could even reach my second slide, their chairs slid back, their eyes drifted away, and the exodus began, all 10 of them, without a word, as if I were invisible. I didn't know it then, but they hadn't walked out because my work was unimportant. They walked out because they were hiding something my presentation threatened to expose. The door clicked shut, and the silence afterward was heavy, not just quiet, but weighted. The kind of silence that presses against your ribs and makes breathing feel like a decision instead of a reflex. For a few seconds, I just stood there. My hands trembled around the clicker. My throat tightened. A voice inside me whispered, "This is it. This is how they finally push you out." But then another voice, quieter, steadier, rose up. "No, they don't get to decide your ending." I walked to the head of the table, Set the clicker down and exhaled. Then I opened my laptop. Pulled up one single document. Something I'd been keeping for months, a digital file labeled simply Holton Internal Exposure. Because while I was working late nights preparing that restructuring plan, I had uncovered something else. Something ugly hiding between financial reports and budget lines. Extra payments that didn't add up. Vendor invoices that looped back to shell companies. Bonuses approved without board signatures. Fraud. Happening under the executives. Possibly by the executives. That's why they left. They knew my plan laid out the numbers too clearly. They knew I would stumble into their secrets, but they underestimated me. Instead of calling HR or legal, both crawling with executive influence, I called someone else. My mentor. The one person in the entire industry the executives feared, board member and founder Evelyn Clark, not retired. Not powerless. Just watching quietly from the outside like a hawk waiting for the right moment to strike. Evelyn picked up on the first ring. Elena? Her voice was sharp, awake. What's happened? They walked out, I said quietly. All of them. 10 minutes into my presentation, and I think I know why. Tell me everything. I did. Every detail, from the abandoned chairs to the suspicious financial trails. She didn't interrupt, just listened, absorbing each word like ammunition. When I finished, she inhaled slowly. Elena, she said, do you trust me? With everything in me. Good, send me everything you have. Immediately, and clear your schedule this afternoon. Why? Because we're about to test whether truth can still shake a company that's forgotten what integrity feels. Like, she hung up before I could respond. My hands were shaking as I encrypted the files and sent them to her private inbox. When I hit send, it felt like releasing a weight I'd been carrying so long I forgot what lightness felt like. Hours later, the email from the CEO arrived. Subject: we need to discuss your behavior this morning. Behavior? They walked out on me, yet somehow I was the disruption? The audacity made my blood burn. But before I could reply, Evelyn's assistant emailed, board meeting at 4 p.m., mandatory attendance. Conference room A. Conference room A wasn't for staff. Or managers. Or executives. It was only for emergencies. Real emergencies. The kind that changed the future of an entire corporation. As I walked into that room later, I saw them, the entire executive team, looking rattled, confused, pale. And sitting at the center of the long table, legs crossed, glasses perched low on her nose, was Evelyn. She didn't look at them. She looked at me. Elena, she said calmly, please sit beside me. They shifted uncomfortably as I walked past them. Some avoided my eyes. Some glared. The CEO cleared his throat. Is this really necessary? Yes, Evelyn cut in. It is. Then she opened the folder in front of her. My folder, my documents, my evidence. One by one, she slid copies across the table toward the executives. Numbers, charts, wire transfers, shell accounts, misappropriated funds. The room went dead silent, and then Evelyn dropped the final sheet on the table. A termination recommendation. Not for me. For all 10 of them, you could smell panic in the room, sharp, metallic, desperate. The CFO, Mark, was the first to break. He leaned forward, sweating through his collar. This is a misunderstanding. No, Evelyn replied without raising her voice. This is a betrayal of shareholder trust. Claudia, the Q, crossed her arms tightly. You can't take a junior employee's claims seriously. Evelyn turned her head with the ease of a queen addressing a peasant. She's the only person in this room who has not lied. The CEO finally spoke, his tone cracking. You're overreacting. These transactions were authorized by whom? Evelyn asked. Silence, because everyone knew the signature trail pointed straight back to them. And the most disturbing part, Evelyn continued, is that you tried to silence the person who uncovered it by humiliating her in a board-requested meeting. The CEO shifted in his seat. We didn't silence her. We simply walked out, I said quietly. Every head snapped toward me. You all walked out. I repeated, my voice steady. Not because my presentation lacked value, but because you knew it revealed gaps in your financial narrative. Gaps you created. The CEO opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Evelyn nodded at me, a small, almost imperceptible Gesture of approval, then she turned to legal. Counsel, proceed. The corporate attorney stood and distributed a new packet per Clause 7B of the Holton Dynamics Ethics Contract, he began. Any executive found engaging in financial misconduct or intentionally obstructing internal investigations may be immediately suspended pending further review. What investigation? One executive gasped. This one, Evelyn said. Which begins today. Chaos erupted. 10 executives shouting at once. Pleading, arguing, bargaining. But Evelyn just raised one hand, and the room fell silent. You all forgot something, she said. Holton Dynamics was founded on innovation and courage. Instead, you turned it into a playground for privilege. You underestimated your employees. You underestimated your responsibility. And worst of all, she glanced at me, you underestimated the woman who saved this company. My throat tightened. Not with fear this time, with something closer to pride. Effective immediately. Evelyn declared, you are all suspended. Security will escort you to gather your personal items. No one moved. No one breathed. Now, she said more sharply. Security entered. The executives filed out, defeated, murmuring to one another like broken politicians. When the last door closed, the room felt as if a storm had passed and left behind a strange, hopeful silence. Evelyn turned to me. Elena, how would you like to present your restructuring plan? She asked softly. To the board, not the people who tried to bury you. My voice cracked. I would be honored. You've earned it, she said. All of it? Then she slid a folder toward me. A new one? Inside was an offer letter. Acting Chief Strategy Officer, effective immediately. My heart stopped. I didn't expect this, I whispered. She gave a small smile. That's because real leaders never do. The next weeks moved like lightning. The board accepted my plan unanimously. The shareholders applauded the company's transparency. The stock price stabilized. And the media praised the bold internal cleanup, but the executives? They were gone. All of them. Resigned, terminated, or under investigation. Their empire of quiet corruption crumbled. In a single afternoon, and all because I refused to break. When they walked out, I still remember standing in that same conference. Room a month later, the room where I had once shaken with humiliation. But this time, I wasn't alone. The board sat with open notebooks. Assistants typed quietly. Analysts watched attentively, and at the head of the table was me. Not invisible. Not dismissed. Not walked out on. Heard. Respected. Leading. When I finished presenting the quarterly recovery update, they applauded. Actual applause. For my work, afterward, Evelyn touched my arm gently. Remember that day? She asked. When they walked out on you? I nodded. You could have walked out on yourself too, she said. But you didn't. Later that evening, alone in my office, my new office, I looked out at the city skyline from the 27th floor. For the first time in 9 years, the view felt like mine. Not borrowed. Not conditional. Mine. That's when I understood. Sometimes life removes people from your path not to hurt you, but to clear space for the ones who will elevate you. Sometimes the worst humiliation is the door to your greatest. Beginning. And sometimes when an onen entire room walks out on you, the universe is telling you to stop shrinking and start stepping into the power you forgot you had. That day didn't break me. It crowned me, and I never walked in small again.